Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Why Grad School. This is our first workshop in our Groundwork for Grad School series. My name is Dr. Megan Bruning. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the director of the Office of Fellowships here at Mason. In case you haven't heard of me or our office before, I'll start by introducing what we do. Our job is to help currently enrolled students and alumni apply to fellowships. Fellowships are external awards that give you money to pay for academic and professional activities like grad school, undergrad, research, study abroad, all kinds of things. That word external that I mentioned means that the money is outside of George Mason University. So, in kind of course of working with students on fellowships, we saw that many people were interested in fellowships that paid for grad school, but they also had some really important basic questions about what grad school is and why they should be thinking about it. So that's where this series of events kind of came from, right? So in today's session, we'll start with a little bit of introductions, kind of what my background is, and then we'll dive into why grad school. What are the reasons that people pursue a graduate education? What is it like? And then we'll talk about how you choose a program, some basics of the applications. I'll also talk about the next two sessions in this Groundwork for Grad School series that will help you prepare more for your graduate journey. My academic major has always been English. I knew that I wanted to go to grad school because I wanted to be a professor and work in higher ed. So I got my master's from Wake Forest University and my doctorate from Lehigh University. And again, I always knew that I wanted to attend an English program, right? Continuing to move on, kind of the two big things that I want you to remember as we start this conversation are that your graduate education journey will vary depending on your field. Grad school for a STEM major looks very different than grad school for humanities major, like myself. I'll be giving you advice that kind of applies to everything, but just know that it's a really good idea to talk to your advisors, your faculty, and your peers in the field. And then you can also take your time to research and decide on what path you want to pursue. Sometimes there's pressure to, immediately go to grad school right after you finish your bachelor's. You don't have to do that, right? You can graduate with your bachelor's, go work, start a master's, decide much later to do a PhD. You have different options, right, for what will work best for you. So the first question, kind of the center of this presentation is why grad school? How do I know if I need to go to grad school? Most folks go to grad school because they need an advanced degree for the job that they want, right? Now, some people will also pursue grad school because they're really passionate or interested in a certain academic topic and they want to learn more about that, right? So that intellectual curiosity piece is absolutely valid and important, but it's want to be upfront and transparent that most folks go to grad school because they need that degree. Now, maybe you don't know what kind of career you want, so you don't know if you need an advanced grad degree. I highly recommend that you check out our career services, folks. There are exploratory advisors if you're not even sure about your major, but there are also folks in different industry fields. They can tell you, hey, if you want to work in this field, you do or you do not need a grad degree, right? Like I said, it's also useful to talk to your professors, talk to alumni of your program, right? And see what was their path. Did they need a degree to get a certain job? Lastly, you can also use tools like LinkedIn. It's a great way to connect with alumni, but you can also see what is typical for a background in a certain role. Do I see across the board that everyone has a master's, right, in this field, or is it kind of more varied? Now, you may be asking, why would I need a graduate degree for a job? Graduate degrees provide more in-depth knowledge on a specific topic than your undergrad degree does, right? It's not saying a bachelor's is useless by any means, right? Is a master's or a PhD allows you to dive deeper into a topic and gives you more expertise that you might need to complete certain or more specific complex tasks in a role, right? In terms of how grad school compares to undergrad, the first difference is the focus, right? Here at Mason and most institutions, as an undergrad student, you take a variety of general education or Mason core courses, right? Stuff in your major and outside of it. In graduate school, your curriculum is just focused on one area of study. So To use myself as an example, in undergrad, I had to take math and science courses. In grad school, my courses were all English literature, right? The length of your grad program also is different from your undergrad, right? The traditional undergrad program is usually 4 years, right? The length of time for a graduate degree can vary from 1 to 5 or more years. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And kind of the last thing, and maybe the biggest difference, is the degree of independence you have as a student. So in undergrad, right, you have classes very several times a week. You have homework due every week, right? As you advance further into grad school, you'll have more choices as to what you study and what you do, particularly if you write a thesis or a dissertation. So you'll be expected to work more independently, but you'll also be working more one-on-one with faculty and less in a large class setting. Those are the biggest differences. The last thing I will say is that because graduate school is about getting you expertise in a certain field, there's often less emphasis on student life. Some universities, like George Mason, have a graduate student life dedicated to making community among students. But in general, right, the point of grad school is to get that knowledge. So there is less of a university-wide community feeling than you might get at the undergrad level. So let's say you're thinking about grad school and you think, yeah, I'm pretty sure I do need a graduate degree, right, to pursue the career I want. How do you decide what to do? So first off, when we're talking about grad school, we're usually talking about one of two kinds of programs. We're talking about Masters of Arts or Sciences or a doctoral PhD degrees. There are certificate programs which are shorter, right, at the graduate level. But again, in general, when you're looking at grad programs, it's going to be a master's or a PhD most often. What is the difference between a master's and a PhD? Master's programs are shorter, right? Usually 1 to 2 years, whereas PhDs are longer. The shortest I've ever heard someone doing a PhD was in 3 years. More typically, you do it in 5 or 6, maybe even more. And that length of time affects how deeply you dive into your topic, right? With a PhD, you have literal years, right, to really research something that you are fascinated by. Master's programs, you have that time too, but it's just shorter, right? Whether you're doing a master's or a PhD, you will start by taking some general classes in your field, right? And then move on to conducting your own research. For master's students, that research often takes the form of a thesis project. This is usually an extended essay. Think of it like a long seminar paper on a topic and research question of your choosing. Dissertation for a PhD, same thing as a thesis, but much longer, right? Many dissertations can turn into books, right, that people publish later on. I've had students, ask me, is it important that I go to a master's program that makes me do a thesis? Sometimes people see thesis requirement and they get freaked out, right? And they don't want to do that program. Making a thesis can be really helpful in developing your independence and kind of reputation as a scholar and a researcher. So when you're looking at master's programs, don't get scared away by a thesis, right? And if the program does not require a thesis, think about what the pros and cons may be, right? Kind of pro would be maybe it's a shorter program, right? Since you're not doing a thesis. Con, it may be harder for you to get into a PhD program or a research intensive job afterwards because you don't have that thesis to show that you can do independent, complex research. Master's or PhD, which one do you choose? It really depends on the field. Again, using myself as an example, it's very common for an English major to go from a master's and then to a PhD. There are other fields, though, where it is very typical to go right from a bachelor's to a doctorate, right? So first, ask your professors. Ask current grad students in your department. Look at alumni, right? And ask them, what have you done? What do you usually see working out for people in my field? Again, look at those professional profiles on LinkedIn to see the typical graduate education paths. The last thing that I always kind of tell students when they're thinking about a PhD in particular is that A PhD is an intensive and long-term commitment, right? At least 3 to 5 years. And it requires a lot of independence, self-management, right? So if that sounds like you are ready to take that step, a doctoral program could be great for you. If you feel like you need some more kind of practice and experience working independently, a master's may be a good choice for you. There are some programs that offer combined master's and PhD courses. The institution I went to for my PhD, Lehigh University, offered this. Basically, the combined program means you get both degrees. Some of the coursework you take for the master's counts towards the course totals you would need for a PhD. So there are different options. Really, to pick between a master's and a doctorate, talk to folks in your field and see what their paths have been. Choosing a program continued. Before you search, before you type, you know, STEM programs, right, for grad school in DC, before you do that, a couple of things that you want to think about. First is the timing. Do you want to go to grad school the semester after you graduate? That was the path that I wanted to take, but that is not required. Dr. Laurence Bray, who's our Senior Associate Provost of Graduate Education here at Mason, actually strongly encourages undergrads to take some time away from a university, internship, working, studying abroad, right, before starting graduate education. Because grad school is, a big commitment. You want to make sure that you are going to be happy, doing this research into these topics. So you don't need to start right away. With that said, maybe you have a timeline where I want to take a year after my bachelor's and then I'll go to grad school. For timing, you also want to think about how long do you want to spend in grad school? Maybe you only want to spend a year, so you want to look for master's programs that are only a year. Maybe you know that you're just going to go to grad school part-time, so that means your time to degree will be longer. So how long do you want to spend doing this? Second consideration is location. Grad study can be intensive, so it's important that you are in a place where you feel safe and comfortable and happy. The location of a grad school can also open you up to different opportunities. Using Mason as an example, right? Many of our grad students in our Shar and Carter schools get connected with amazing organizations inside and outside the federal government because of where we are located. Something else to consider is the learning mode. More and more graduate programs are offering completely online instruction. Maybe that doesn't interest you though, and you want to be in person or you want to have a mix of the two. So think about, what way do you learn best? And then lastly, finances. Now, we will do a whole workshop on paying for grad school. So when I say finances here, what I mean is just consider, do I have any money right now to spend on grad school? If the answer is no, that means I need to look for programs that have funding for their students. Again, we can talk more about the paying for grad school in that workshop. But even before you search, just start with that basic, line of, do I have money right now for this or do I not? Where do you find graduate programs? There are a couple of different places you can go. The first two are some online databases that I recommend. The first database is called ProFellow. ProFellow is a free online database of fellowships, hence the name. So this is a great place to look for scholarships of all kinds. I'm recommending it now because one of the things you can look for are fully funded master's and doctoral programs. So if thinking before you search, I don't have any money to pay for grad school, I'm going to go to ProFellow and look for fully funded doctoral programs, meaning the school will pay for everything, right? So not every grad program is fully funded, but it's a good place to start, right? And to see what's out there. The next database is from Peterson's Test Prep. They have a grad program database, which allows you to search for programs in a lot of different ways by field, location, cost, things like that. And then lastly, look at the profiles of your professors here at GMU. In the world of graduate education, I mentioned that you will work very closely with faculty mentors. If you've got a teacher here at Mason and they're researching something that you think is really cool, chances are their mentor at their grad school did something similar, or they know people at other grad schools who are doing the same topic. So ask your faculty for recommendations of grad programs because they know who in their field is doing the stuff that you enjoy. My last kind of tip here on choosing a grad program, particularly for online resources, is to be wary of rankings. Like US News comes out every year, right, with the best colleges, grad programs, etc. The reason I encourage you to kind of be cautious about using those is that the data they're using to rank may not reflect your personal fit for a program, right? A program may not be ranked as prestigious as another, but it could be a good fit for you because of the curriculum and the faculty and the funding, right? So you can absolutely look at these rankings, but shop around, right? Use multiple sources to help you decide what you are interested in applying to. What should I look for when I am looking at grad programs? First thing you want to check out is the size of the program. Do you want to be in a doctoral program with a large cohort or a large group of students, or do you want something smaller? For me personally, I knew for my doctoral program, I wanted to be at a small university with a small group of PhD students. And that's what Lehigh provided, right? Sometimes the size of the program can also tell you how competitive the grad program is in terms of admissions. If a program is admitting 90 students every year and another program is only admitting five, that can maybe give you a sense of your odds in getting selected. So look at the size and then look at the curriculum. Just like all the majors here at Mason, when you go to a grad program's website, they will tell you what are the required courses that you have to take. So take a look at them and see, do they sound interesting to you? Do they have a variety of electives that you could take? Third thing to think about is outside of the classes, does the program give you the chance to do research or to teach if that's important to you? For myself, I said I wanted to be a professor, so I was looking for programs that would give me the chance to be a TA, right? If you really care about doing a research, look at the curriculum and see, is research part of my classes? If not, are there research centers at the university where I could work? Fourth thing to consider, and this is usually a very big one, what funding does the program offer? Again, we've got a whole section, a whole session about paying for grad school, but really read carefully for what money they provide you. And then lastly, look at faculty mentors. Whether you end up doing a thesis for master's degree or not, again, you'll be expected to work carefully and consistently with one or two professors. So when you go to a grad school program website, look at who is teaching there, right? And see, oh yeah, that sounds interesting. I could see myself doing that. I recommend that you try to find at least two faculty because inevitably someone goes on sabbatical, someone retires, right? You want to know you have a couple of options for who could mentor you while you are in that program. Alrighty, so let's say you have done some research, you have found a couple of programs you're considering. When do I apply to grad school? The answer is it varies depending on your field and the kind of program that you're looking for. Some programs have rolling admissions. Some will allow you to apply in the fall and start in the spring or are swapped, right? So it really does kind of take research first to see what the typical timelines for your area are. I recommend that if you're thinking at all about grad school, start, doing some research as when you're a junior. That way you've got plenty of time to consider your options. And remember, you don't need to start grad school right after graduating from Mason. So if you're at the end of your career and you're like, oh, I'm late, remember, you can go to grad school later. That is okay. A common question I get is how many programs should I apply to? Well, the first part of that answer is the finances. Many grad programs have application fees, so you need to budget how much do you have, right, to pay these fees. Some grad programs will waive the application fee if you ask, right? But again, first consider what your budget is. After we talk about budget, apply to multiple programs, right? 3 to 8 is the range that I see most often, right? And then you want to have a variety of schools that you are applying to. You see, I've broken it down here. You want to apply to a couple of programs, 1 to 2, where they admit a lot of their students, and you feel confident, right, that you could get in. You want to have a couple of maybes or schools that are a little more competitive, a little more selective, but would still be good fits for you. And then 1 to 2 reach schools. These are the most, elite, selective, competitive schools right in the country. And you still want to give yourself a chance of that kind of experience. Again, the point is that you apply to a variety, right, of options. What do you need to do to apply to grad school? The applications will vary depending on the program, but there are a few things that you can expect to consistently produce and upload. First, you will often be asked to write a personal statement or a cover letter where you explain why you want to go to grad school, why this program is the best fit for you, and how it's going to help you achieve your goals. Our last groundwork for grad school info session will be on personal statements and rec letters. So come back for that workshop to learn all the ins and outs of writing a good personal statement. You may also be asked to produce a writing sample, so a paper that you've written for a class to show your writing skills. You'll usually be asked to upload a transcript, often unofficial is okay. You will always be asked for letters of recommendation. 3 letters is the most kind of common number. They may ask for more. And again, our last workshop will be about personal statements and rec letters. So we'll talk about how to ask for these letters, how to make sure they're good, all that stuff. And then lastly, your program that you're applying to may ask for GRE scores. In case you haven't heard of the GRE before, it's the graduate version of the SAT, right? Measures skills in logic, reading, writing comprehension, right? More grad programs are getting rid of the GRE requirement. So what I tell students is you should take the GRE if it is required for the program you want to apply to, right? If it is only a preferred requirement, you want to think carefully about how much the GRE costs, right? And how much time it takes to prepare. One question I often get is, I'm applying to multiple grad schools. Can I reuse the same personal statements? Can I ask the same people to write me letters each time? Yes, absolutely. If you're applying to 8 graduate programs, writing 8 completely different personal statements is going to take a lot of time. So it is very common to write, an initial cover letter and then revise it, right, for programs that you are applying to as you go along. The key thing, though, is just to make sure that you do revise those materials each time. It's embarrassing for everyone, right? If you are applying to a GMU program, but in your cover letter, you say that you're so excited to apply to UVA, right? So make sure you revise and update the materials each time. Alrighty, I have given you a lot of information in a very short period of time. So let's kind of sum up. Graduate school can be a really exciting step in your academic journey. As you're figuring out if you want to go to grad school, what kind of program, where to apply, the best thing to do is start asking questions. Talk to your faculty, alumni, career services. Come talk to us in fellowships, right? And we will happily give you advice. Thank you so much for attending today's presentation. If you want to learn more about fellowships, like I said, there are fellowships that pay for undergrad, for research, study abroad. If that interests you, you can make an appointment with us on Patriot Connect, or you can email our office fellowships@gmu.edu.